I've had my CNC for about 4 years now, and I've learned a bunch along the way. I've made a lot of mistakes, and I've made actually some pretty cool projects once I've figured out those mistakes and the right way to move forward. I want to start a new CNC video series. This is going to be video 1. I'm just going to call the series CNC 101. I've stripped my whole machine down. I've taken out my whole spoilboard, the T-track and everything, so that I can replicate what you will be looking at day 1 after you get your CNC. Before we get started, there are a couple things you're going to need. You're going to need an 1/8 inch end mill. You're going to need a 1-inch surfacing bit, and you're going to need some T-track. Now, if you don't have the T-track yet, not a huge deal. I'll show you a quick workaround. The first thing we need to do is to set up a spoilboard or a wasteboard. That's what you are going to be setting your material on, and you can just cut into that spoilboard. Hopefully it's small amounts at a time, a 1/16 of an inch or an 1/8 of an inch. But you need a board on top of this board here, and you need a way to hold all of your material down while you are actually using your router to cut through that wood. So the first step is you've got your whole machine assembled. I'm not going to go through all the different assembly methods. Just go through your instructions per the manufacturer, set your machine up, and this is pretty much what you should be looking at right here. You'll have a clean surface here. You won't have all the holes in the line on mine yet, and you will have your router on just like this. Once you turn your machine on, it's going to ask you, do you want a home? In this circumstance, yes. Once we hit that home button, what it's going to do, it's going to rise up to the upper end of the Z. Then it's going to start to move, and it's going to bottom out over here on our left side. Once it feels that positive electronic stop, it's going to stop and back off just a little bit. Now it's going to come all the way forward to our front left corner, and that's the spot that we're going to work off of all the time. So it's going to continue to run this way. It's going to come all the way till it hits the stop right here. It's going to read that it's bumping right there, and it's going to stop and probably back up maybe 1/4 of an inch. There we go. Now that our machine is properly home, you'll see all this turns green. Your X is home, your Y is home, and your Z is home. So now we know we are in the furthest front and left side of our setup here. And now we're going to use that to our advantage to actually scribe into this work surface our actual working area. Throughout this video, I'm going to be creating 3 files that will be super easy to follow along for you guys at home. If you don't want to follow along and create these programs and these files and these toolpaths yourself, I will leave a link down in the description. So once you have an easel set up and you have your account set up, click that link. It'll bring that into easel, and your 3 files will be there. You won't have to set them up or do any of that. I do encourage you to do that just so you can get used to the program and get used to what it's like setting up some CNC files. And then you can just click along as I'm clicking along. And if you get lost or something gets confusing or whatever, you'll be able to go back in that video and just kind of see what I was doing. But I promise you, these toolpaths are super easy, super simple. There's nothing complicated about them. So you need to find the working area of your CNC. So the best way to do that is to go to the manufacturer's website. Scroll through there, you should find a section, maybe it's labeled specs or dimensions. And in there, you should be able to find your working area. Once you find that workable area, in my case it's 32 1/4 by 32 1/4, write those numbers down because we need those for the next step. First thing we're going to do, we're going to search for a program called Easel. That's going to be Easel by Inventables. Click on that. If you don't already have an account, set one up. You can see I'm already logged in here and I've got a bunch of previous files. We don't want any of those. We want a brand new project. So just go ahead and click there. Now you're going to click this box right here, and this is basically your working area. So we're going to take that number we just found. In my case, that's 32 by 32. And then you hit that home button right there, and there is your entire working area of your CNC. Click that line tool and click as close to 0, 0 as you can. If you hold the shift button, that'll create an exact straight line. So click the lower right and then go up that y-axis and click the upper right corner. Highlight the entire thing and just see how good of a job you did setting your area. I didn't, so I changed mine to, again, 32 by 32. And then we want our lower left origin to be 0, 0. That's where we're going to run all of our files from, the lower left corner. Just need to set the depth here. I'm going to go very shallow, maybe like 0.05, 0.06. That's like about a 1/16 of an inch. Over here on the right side, go to Cut Settings, click Manual. Your depth per pass, you want it to be over that depth that you just set. It won't ever go deeper than the number you've already picked there on the left side there for your cut depth. Then we can just hit Simulate and we can hit Play. Now any of the blue, that is the router and the router bit actually cutting your material. So you can see it's going to run this front edge all the way up until it hits that number that we punched in earlier. In my case, that's 32 inches. Then it's going to go all the way back up that Y dimension there, and it's going to go all the way to the back of our work surface as well. That's going to hit all of our perimeters. Then when it raises up, that line's going to become red. That means it is not actually contacting our material. It's going to come to the front left corner, the origin that we already set, and now we have our perimeter laid out. So now that you have those files created, time to bring them out to the CNC, plug them in, and run that first pass that will show you your boundaries of your working area. I'm using a 30-degree V-bit here because it comes to a really fine point. If you don't have that, you can use really any sort of tapered bit. They all have that same geometry where they come to a very fine point. Or you could use an 1/8 inch. If you're trying to limit the amount of bits you're going to buy to start, you could use an 1/8 inch because that will actually work for a couple of these later processes. But you can see I have this old score line here. I don't know if anything has moved. I have unscrewed this whole assembly and kind of tweaked it from time to time. So we need to set our Z. So all you're going to do, you're just going to take your controller like this. You can switch speeds. And I'll just use a piece of paper. What I'll do is I'll lower this just until that paper starts to catch. Okay, right there. The paper caught. So now I'll come over to here and I will zero my Z. That's this little function right here. You can see that number right there. And now it's 0. So now my entire machine is zeroed until the front leftmost part of my work surface. So I can raise this back up. I can get that piece of paper out of there. And now I'm ready to scribe this line across here and across the back. So now it's just time to load in a file and watch it run. So with this particular one, you come down here to the file folder. I've got a bunch of files on here, as you can see. Again, I've been running mine for about 4 years. But here's day 1, and then boundary lower left. That's what I've got it saved as. So it's going to take a second here, and then it's going to load the file name in right there. That's what we want. So there we go, boundary lower left. Says it's going to take 57 seconds. So before you hit that play button, make sure you turn your router on. It's going to get loud, but I'm going to hit this cut. I'm going to push play, and we're going to watch it run. Once you turn the router on, it is going to come down on its Z-axis first, and then it's just going to run over here to the right. I don't see any dust flying up, so that must mean I am in the exact same track that I was when I first did this. Going to continue all the way over to the right. Now it's going to go up in the other axes. Once this finishes, it's going to then come back to the home position in this front left corner. And now we have scribed that line, and now we know our perimeter and our boundary of our work area. Now that that file is done, you can see the machine homed itself again. We were right over that same corner that I wanted to be, and it followed that exact same track that I did the first time 4 years ago, which is pretty awesome. So now that we know our boundaries, we got our front left and our far right boundary, we can start stacking this with our actual spoil board material. That spoil board material of choice is MDF. Try to get the thickest piece possible. This stuff right here is 3/4. This stuff down here is actually 1 inch, but I don't have enough 1 inch to create a whole new spoil board for you guys. So I'm just gonna show you with some 3/4. My work area here is 32 1/4 by 32 1/4. I'm actually gonna call that 32 just for the sake of simplicity. So I need to cover this with about 32 inches of MDF. But what we want to do, we want to have our spoil board butted up to that corner there, but we want to use T-track. Now I found that when I set this board up here, if I cut this to a width of 5 3/4, and then I insert my T-track in there, which is I think just about 1 inch, then I can put another 5 3/4, a 1 inch, a 5 3/4, a 1 inch. It works out perfect. It covers my entire work surface and it gives me plenty of areas to clamp. So we're making progress here. We got a couple more quick steps and then we will be ready to actually start using the CNC. I've set up some marks here that I will drill through and I will use my attachment points there. I just have some washer head screws. Because I'm extra, I wanted these to be set up to be the exact same on all these boards. So I've gone through and I've done that. I've set these up. You don't have to do that. One thing you want to keep in mind and one thing you really have to do, this is just a side angle here. You want to countersink all of your screws so they are far below the surface. So if this black area here was my actual wasteboard surface, and this is just a cutoff view, we want to have the size of the bowl head. In my case, this is just under 1/2 inch. So a 1/2 inch Forstner bit works perfect. I want to drill almost all the way through. And then I just want to finish that out with a size of drill bit that is just larger than the screw. And this is what we're looking for right there. That way that screw is far below your work surface here. So if you set your Z up wrong or your bit comes loose and it actually comes down and starts plowing kind of low, you won't hit that screw head. And also this gives you plenty of room to resurface your spoil board if it does start to get a little bit chewed up. So whether you do this with a hand drill, a drill press, or anything like that, I don't really know of another way. So a hand drill or a drill press, you want to do this to all of your holes. So I'm just going to go through and I'm going to set that exact same thing up on this board and then the other 4 boards. And then I will bring you guys back in and we will get ready to start attaching this to our spoil board. Okay, we have all the MDF just setting here on our work surface. I have my T-track because I've already had my machine up and running for a couple years now. If you don't have your T-track yet, you can just measure this right here and then just leave that much of a gap in between all these. And then once your T-track comes in, you can just slide it in after the fact and you'll be good to go. If you don't like that option, you can again measure this. I think this is 7/8 of an inch. You can actually cut a bunch of spacers on like a table saw or what have you. And then as you're setting this up, you can put those spacers in there, sandwich these together, screw them down, and then you can pull that spacer out. And then when you get your T-track, you can slide that in there, screw that down, and you'll be good to go. I've got all my T-track put in here. And again, you might not have the T-track. You might just have your spacers. But we can sandwich these all together, and then we need to set the lower right corner of our 5th board here in the lower right corner that you scribed earlier. So you're going to slide that over, make sure you're lined up, and then what I do is I like to make that line disappear. So I'll pull that forward, and then I will also do the same on this right side. Make sure that front edge there disappears. Make sure that right edge over there disappears. And then I would just start screwing this down. If you want, you can just do maybe a couple screws on this first one just to really lock it down. And then as you start to build this, you just want to sandwich this and just push it against this. Use this as basically a fence. Push this whole thing over to here and start screwing the rest of this down. And as long as you keep lining up your front edge and make that front line disappear, everything will be good. You'll have this wasteboard all set up and we'll be ready for the next operation. So now that I've got this number 5 here locked down, I can slide all of this over. I can pull my T-track to the front. I can set my number 4 board up, and as long as it's pushed over as far as it can go, I know that everything is gapped correctly. And I'll just screw that down. Make sure nothing moved. I will again push in that direction there. And then so on and so forth for the rest of the surface. And there we have it. I am not going to bore you, make you watch me run the rest of these screws in. T-track is down, MDF is down, but we are not done quite yet. There are 2 more tool paths that we need to run. One is absolutely critical, so let's get into that one. Back here in easel, we're going to click the plus box on the bottom. That's just going to add another space for us to work. We're going to click the square, and we're going to set our dimensions. Same ones we just set up. My case, 32 by 32. Our origin, we're going to set for the lower left corner. Once again, 0, 0. And now that square is centered directly on our work surface. We're going to set a minimal depth. I just chose 0.06. And then just change our bit to a 1-inch surfacing bit. Now this is where some of the magic comes in. You're going to come up here to Machine and General Settings. In this step over category, it's set for 40%. We're going to make it 90%, which means it's almost going to make a full 1-inch step over as it's cutting. So you can see there 11 minutes. If you simulate the time, if we go back to the 40% and we check the simulate time, it's 23 minutes. So that's over double. So what we're going to do, we're going to go back to that step over. We're going to change that back to 90. Now I don't suggest you get in here and mess with a bunch of this until you know what you're doing. But with this works perfect here. And then I'm just going to change it to a raster. And what that's going to do, that means it's just going to move left to right on that axis. Once again, blue lines mean it's actually contacting our surface. So it's just going to go back and forth all the way around. And then I think it's going to do one final perimeter outline. Yep. And then it's going to lift up in red and come back to our origin, which is always going to be our front left corner. So this next toolpath we're going to run, that is that pocket that is going to surface this entire surface of this spoil board, and that is absolutely critical to getting good results with your router. We put down these pieces of MDF on our work surface, we've got our spoil board down, but we don't know exactly how this surface here relates to the axes on our router or our spindle. It should be pretty close to everything being perpendicular and square, but pretty close is not close enough, so we need to run that pocket pass. What that's going to do, it's going to start in the lower left corner, and it's just going to go over this entire surface. It's going to go down however deep we set it, about a 1/16 of an inch, and then that is going to true up this surface with our actual router bit, and that will then make sure that all of our cuts, all of our carves, anything we're doing anything we put down on this surface board is perpendicular and square and all that good stuff to your bit right here. It's basically called tramming your CNC. So I'm going to load up a 1-inch surfacing bit into here. It's really the only time I use that 1-inch bit. I'm going to jog it over. I'm going to home the machine so it jogs over to that lower left corner. Set my Z, and then I'm going to run the file. When that router bit's cutting this MDF, that stuff is absolutely horrible to breathe. You don't want to breathe any of that MDF in. So I'm going to start the file off. I'm going to show you the whole thing running, and then I'm going to connect my dust collector to that. Probably put down the enclosure, I'm not sure. But I want to trap as much of that dust as possible. I don't want that getting airborne, and you don't either. So you can hear the dust collector just powering down now. I took the dust collector and I cleaned off all this, just got up most of the dust or whatever. Like I said, this MDF is super nasty when you're cutting it, but this is exactly what we want. We want a nice, perfectly smooth surface. We don't see any divots or any gouges, which would tell me that the router is out of plumb one way or another, front to back or left to right. This is exactly what we want here though. Now we have a perfectly plumb, perpendicular, trammed spoil board to our router. This bad boy is finished. You could start using this thing as is and you would get great results. I would grade this thing probably an A, but I have a way to take that A up to an A+, and I'm going to show you how right now with 2 other things we're going to do to this wasteboard. First thing we're going to do, we're going to add T-track to the left and the right side of this spoil board. And that's just going to add more areas to clamp and just make this thing even more versatile. But the trick comes in at how we attach it to our surface board. If we take our T-track and we just set it right down on our work surface here and we screw it down, because of the edge of this and there's nothing on this back side supporting the back of the clamp, as soon as we slide this into our T-track and we go to clamp it down and actually put some pressure, you'll see it'll take this front end all the way up. And now we're not doing anything. We are not clamping anything. We're not getting any kind of pressure here. So if we elevate this up with a scrap piece of wood underneath this edge here, and we set it up so it is just underneath our work surface, as you can see, that will allow that clamp to tighten up and then apply our pressure to our board. So I'm just going to cut 2 strips, one for the right side, one for the left side. So now if you've got a board that's going to sit something like this, and you want to get a clamp over on this side here, you slide this clamp in like this. Tighten it down. And then I'll jog the machine forward. You can see that carriage was right by it. We have no problem at all. We have no interference. So that's the feature there. Now there is one more feature, and that's why I wanted to do these clamps first. So the furthest this clamp can reach in is right about there. So we're going to put a fence here and a fence here. So So I'm going to back this off maybe just a little bit. We'll see like right there. So we'll put a little mark there. And that's actually where we want the furthest that our material can go over, something like that. And that brings me to one final upgrade that's really going to take this to the next level. And we're going to install a quick and simple PVC fence just made out of 3/4 inch PVC pipe. Earlier when we surfaced this MDF spoilboard right here, we made it perpendicular and plumb to our router back there. Now it's time to add some PVC pipes, and what that's going to do is that's going to create an out fence, but it's basically going to be two different walls here. We're going to have a wall of PVC pipes back here, and then that's going to be parallel to our y-axis in this rail right here, and then we're going to have some PVC pipes here along the front, and that's going to be parallel to the x-axis right there. Everything is going to be square to your router, parallel to all your fences, and everything's going to work out well. I know that was kind of a mouthful there. I was having a hard time spitting it out. Sometimes the brain doesn't get the words to the mouth just right, but once I set it up and you guys set it up and you cut yours at home, it's going to make perfect sense how easy and repeatable it is. I'm just going to put a little mark here. So that's kind of where we want the side to be. We want our board to be there. So we want our PVC to actually be something like there. That's a great looking circle there. Now we just need to figure out how far forward we want to come. So since I have an enclosure, I'm worried about the dust boot hitting the front of this. So when I lay this down like this, I basically want to drive my carriage as far forward as I can, but I want to stop just short of hitting that. So that right there is just short of contacting so I want to call that as far forward as I can kind of comfortably be. So I'll take my dust boot off. I will take this, I will kind of run this down. So now I'm just going to kind of eyeball, and I'm just going to put a mark right on the center. So that gives me center of that bit there. So I don't want to have to come any more far forward if I can avoid it. So just to give myself a little bit of play, I'm going to move that back just a little bit more. So now I just need to carry these lines over, square these up, and then I will have a little start point right there. I can take a square, something like this. That was where I wanted that mark to be, that one right there. I can carry that over, do something like that, and then that mark right there was where I wanted to be there. So I can extend that one. That's pretty good right there. That right there is my intersection of as far forward as I want my material to be and as far left as I want my material to be. So going back in this direction here, I can just space these evenly, maybe call it, I don't know, 4 inches or 3 inches. But on my front fence here, because I want to watch out for this T-track, I need to be a little bit more careful of where I lay out all of my holes here. So I'm just going to write down some measurements here. This stuff is nothing special. I think it's like $3 or $4 for a 3-footer. But what you're going to do, you're just going to cut it into chunks like this. First thing we need to do is just measure the OD of this pipe right here. So I'm measuring right there 1.56 OD. So we'll just call that 1.06. Give ourselves just a little bit of play in there. And then I want to measure the wall. Just under 1/8 of an inch. So that's going to be perfect because we can use an 1/8 inch end mill, which is 0.125. And that will give us a nice little hole just to stick this in. And the center plug will still be there. And obviously the rest of the support material will be there as well. And then we'll be able to push that in. We don't want it loose. So that's why we're only going up to 1.06 for this. So we're going to jump back into easel and we're going to set up the tool path for this. So we're just going to create a circle here. The width is going to be 1.06. The height is going to be 1.06 as well. That was a number we got with those calipers. We're going to change the cut though. Instead of being a pocket, we're going to cut inside the shape path. And you can see that creates our circle. To make sure we have our 1/8 inch bit there selected. And now it's just time to start placing these pipes on our board. So this one we want to set for our center. So once you set the 0 on the X, you can see it sets right there on that line. And then we're going to go 2.5 on the Y. Let me zoom in just a little bit, give you a better view. Then we're just going to edit, copy, edit, paste. Same thing, we're going to set our X for 0. Last one was 2.5. We're going to go 7.5 on this one. Then we are just going to basically rinse and repeat. Edit, copy, edit, paste. Set our X to 0. We're going to go 12.5 with our Y right here. And that gives us a pretty good amount there. Pretty good support there on the left side there on the Y. Now we just need to do the X on this lower axis here. So we're going to edit, copy, edit, paste. Bring in a copy. Now the Y is going to be 0 because we want to be right on that line. And now our X, we're going to start punching in those numbers that we found earlier. So now we're going to place this one. Our Y is going to be 0 and our X is going to start punching in those numbers we found earlier. This first one is going to be 2 3/8. Then we're going to edit, copy, edit, paste. Stay on our Y 0 and our X now is going to be 5. Punch that in. And then we're just going to rinse and repeat. We're going to continue down this X axis and we're just going to keep punching these numbers in. 8 7/8 on this one right here. You can see those are starting to get spaced out and you can visualize where the T-track's going to be. It's going to be kind of on that 4 line there and like the 10 number there. This one's 11.5. And then we're going to do one more. We're going to set this one for 15.25. Punch those in. And now we got pretty good support. We got support on the left side. And now we have support on the bottom as well. We're going to set our depth for 1/2 inch. Our spoilboard is 3/4 inch. Or if you got lucky and you put 1 inch in there, you got plenty of room in there. All those yellow lines there, those are just tabs. Our machine thinks we're going to be cutting through. And we're not actually cutting through because we're using thicker material. And then we're just going to change the manual settings here. We are going to go a little bit faster. We don't need to go that slow. I'm going to bump this up to 80 and I'm going to bump up the depth per pass here a little bit as well. I'm going to go 0.08 on this one. And then you're just going to simulate here 4 minutes. So that's not bad at all. You could speed these up if you really want to, but I think 4 minutes is not a problem. And again, the red is just when the machine is moving. Then it's going to plunge in, which is the blue there. And it's going to cut all of these circles. These circles are going to fit that PVC pipe absolutely perfect. So if I want my material to be right there on that line we made earlier, and I want my PVC to be there, there's my backside. I need to set my file up 1/2 inch over and 1/2 inch down because that's half the diameter of this PVC right here. So I just measured over 1/2 inch over, 1/2 inch down, and that's actually going to be my 0 when I run my file. So now I've got my 1/8 inch end mill in there. I am right over that cross hatch that we just did. 0 0 0. Everything is zeroed out. Everything is going to be lined up perfectly on that cross hatch. So now I just need to load the PVC fence file and we're good to go. There we have it. The wasteboard is 100% complete. Now let me go ahead and show you all the benefits of having that PVC fence installed on your wasteboard. So if you have a board like this, for instance, you can just kind of roughly set it there so you'll know your rough boundaries, and then you can just push these in. I like to get 2 on each fence. And now you push it against that, and now you know everything is square to your rails, everything's parallel to the gantry, everything is perfect. So then all you need to do is bring your router over one time, ping this lower left corner right here, and then you can just run your files from there. So we're gonna jog the router over in this direction and we're gonna find this corner here. You can do this one of two ways. You can do it with the tiniest bit that you have, like the sharpest point bit that you have, and you can just manually set it right there. Or you can use something like a touch probe. You might not have a touch probe, I happen to. If you do, you would have to move this piece of PVC, put it back there so you can actually fit the touch probe in there. But jogging it and just manually setting it yourself usually works pretty good. So you would just jog your machine forward, start bringing your Z down, get it close. So now that we're real close, all we gotta do is make our fine-tune adjustments here. So as the Z starts to get lower to your work surface, you can really start to slow it down and hone it in. Get it right on that corner. You can see we are right on that corner. That's exactly where we want to be. We come up to our screen. We click that button there, and now it's zeroed everything out. So now it knows that that corner right there is where we want to start from all the time. So the great part about doing it this way, I can now move this router, jog it around, do whatever I want to do. Let's say I have a different file I want to run, or this one's like a 2-day file, so I need to carve it, take it off, do something to it, maybe pour some epoxy, then bring it back in. I will have a perfect, repeatable start point each and every time I want to run this machine. So now I can run this thing around, I can move it, you know, I can use a dust collector if I want, whatever I want to do. Let's say it just happens to be there. I can come over to my controller. I can click the target. It's going to say, do you want to move to your origin? You click confirm. And it's going to bring it right back to that corner each and every time. So this XY origin trick actually works anytime you leave the router here and you turn your machine off. So again, I'm going to jog out of the way, just some random spot. I'm going to hit the target. I'm going to bring it to the origin. Then I'm actually going to power my entire machine off. It's going to shut down. It'll take a second. I'll fast forward to when the machine is actually off. So now I'm going to power the machine back on. And wherever you left your router last, that's where your CNC is going to call the origin. So when your screen pops up and it asks you, do you want a home? Now you're going to click no, because your machine is already in your XY origin, which is where you want it, which is right over that corner. That's what we want to work with. We can just have this repeatability each and every time. We know everything is square and parallel. We know everything is going to be correct when we run our file. Things aren't going to be twisted and not look, you know, like a professional did it. So after this thing gets done booting up, should be any second now. There we go. I heard the machine turn on. It's going to pop onto the screen and then it's going to say home machine. Home machine. I'm going to click no or cancel. Okay. And then if you look there, everything is 0, 0, 0. That's what we want. So now when we were to load a file in here and we were just to hit play, we know that it's always going to be on that corner. It's always going to be set up there, no matter what size board you have in here, no matter what you do. And then again, you can jog your machine around, you know, put a new board in there, clean off the wasteboard, vacuum it, whatever you want to do. Click your target. confirm, and now it just moved it right back over that corner. So that's how you get repeatability. That's how you get professional results. The A+ spoil board is complete. I swear by this style here. There's another style out there where you basically drill 1,000,000 holes in the bottom of your wasteboard, and then you take T-nuts and you pound them in from underneath. That just seems like a ton of work. And then once you've chewed that spoil board up enough, you just need to just throw that one out. So all that hardware and all that time, and then you got to do the whole process again. With this one here, when it gets to a point to where you can't resurface the board anymore, just pull out those 5 slices, put 5 brand new slices on there, and you're good to go. These are the clamps I swear by. I'll leave a link down in the description. You can pick these up. But these are oops clamps, meaning oops, you ran your router into these. It's no big deal. These are made out of wood, and all your hardware here is nylon. So these are all router safe. So pick these up, add these to your A+ spoil board. And if you guys like this video, please hit that thumbs up. It'll help spread it to other people out there. Maybe some people that are on the fence about buying a CNC, but it looks a little daunting. I think this was super easy to follow. Hit that subscribe button. You can check out the other videos on my channel. I do a lot of how-tos in there. And most importantly, guys, until next time, take it easy.